Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christine Rodriguez, and I'm the host of Astrology Now podcast, where I post much more frequently. So if you are interested in more astrological information from the Vedic perspective, you can find Astrology Now on any major podcast platform. So today, what I'm wanting to talk about is how to find soulmate connections in Vedic astrology. I have another video that I will list in the descriptions talking about some of the main, more superficial qualities to compatibility in a birth chart. Definitely be sure to check that out. So in my previous video on compatibility, we spoke about some of the main indicators that make people compatible in Vedic astrology. These things include qualities like the moon sign, the sun sign, the placement of Venus, and of course, the karmic nodes of Rahu and Ketu, which we're going to talk more about today. We're going to continue to expand upon Rahu and Ketu and the importance of Rahu and Ketu and soulmate connections. Rahu and Ketu are, as just mentioned, the karmic nodes of the moon, meaning that they have a very karmic significance. And when we have karma with someone, it kind of suction cups us together to ensure that we work out some sort of karmic play, that we learn the appropriate lessons that we're intended to learn from one another. My teacher, Dr. Foss, he's very funny. I had him on the podcast a while back, and he was saying that you hear bond and you feel good, but then you hear bondage and maybe you don't feel as good. Relationships can have, both. Relationship is a profound spiritual practice. And so we can view it through the lens of beauty and lightness and respect and dignity and integrity. And unfortunately, there can also be relationships that are toxic and addicting and play into more of our darker karmic cycles and patterns. So both can exist, right, in relationship. Similarly, at the highest manifestation, relationship can lead us to a deepening of our spiritual life, our spiritual connection, and understanding ourselves and evolving ourselves. So these soulmate connections, these really strong, powerful karmic connections, they can be either a path to the darker patterns keeping us in this cycle, of addiction and, lower vibrational frequency, for lack of better phrasing, or they can lead us to divinity and self-realization. So very, very powerful things we're talking about here. And that being said, if you watch that other video, just because we have compatibility with someone in this video today, just because we have really deep karmic connection with someone, doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. Right? It could be a bond, it could be bondage. It could mean that we're playing out some pretty heavy karmas too. If you look at the karmic connection between O.J. Simpson and his wife, they had a karmic connection for sure, but you can't help the fact that he has really dark, heavy karma, right? So just throwing that out there, just because we have these karmic indications, just because there is a lot of synastry and even compatibility, we still need to keep these other ideas in our mind. And also, as we dive deeper, we can see what types of karmas are being activated. We're not going to get too far into that today. But what we are going to be focusing on today is the Atmakaraka and the Darakaraka, Rahu and Ketu in the Navamsha or the D9 chart. And I have so many different examples pulled up for you all. So, some of you may not have the patience to get through this entire video because I'm going to have so many examples, but I really do recommend watching because it's just so incredibly profound and interesting. So again, in the previous video, we spoke about Sun, Moon, Venus. Super obvious stuff, okay? The placement of the moon is our mind and our emotionality, our personality. Venus is how we give and receive love, how we give and receive intimacy. The sun also has a lot to do with our soul. The sun is the natural Atmakaraka, and it has to do with, how we appear to the outer world, how we present ourselves. Rahu and Ketu, of course, is going to show that past life karma and then forward moving karma. And so that stuff we can see with friends and family and coworkers and colleagues, and it's just kind of like what makes sense, like our type. You know, I always think about Venus as being kind of like our romantic type, but some of us have a romantic type, and then we have people who are actually good for us, people who we feel this soul resonance with. Okay, so we could have Venus in Aries and be attracted to people who are very passionate and excited and athletic and leaders and whatever. But then our Darakaraka, which we're going to get into today, maybe our Darakaraka is in the sign of Cancer, meaning on a soul level, you know, when we're around people who are nurturing and devoted and, you know, maybe move at a slower pace and who have this natural tendency to nurture and to fuel and nourish, it kind of sets our soul at ease. And again, with these Darakarakas and Atmakarakas that we're going to talk about today, you will see soulmate connections. Without a doubt. I'm going to show you. It's amazing. Okay. So, and I should say, we can have it all, right? If we have a type, we can still have someone who has some Aries qualities, who has some Cancerian qualities, right? It's not choose one or the other, but that's kind of to put it superficially. So the Atmakaraka is the planet that is holding the highest degrees in your birth chart. So if you go to innerknowing.yoga, you go to offerings and then chart, you can calculate your birth chart. And there are little numbers next to each planet. Those numbers are going to be indicative of what the degree of your planet is. The planet with the highest degrees is going to be the Atmakaraka. And so, as we mentioned, the sun is the natural Atmakaraka, okay? The sun represents the soul for everybody. And for us individually, in our birth chart, the planet holding the highest degrees is going to be our unique Atmakaraka. That planet is going to indicate our soul. It's going to give us so much information on the path of our life, karmic lessons we're here to learn, what we're meant to experience, and the house that it's in, the sign that it's in. We're going to really confront those qualities in our life and integrate them within ourselves. It's a really beautiful thing to study, is the Atmakaraka. It reveals a lot. Now, the Darakaraka is the planet holding the lowest degrees. So same thing, you go to your birth chart, you find the planet with the lowest degrees. That's the Darakaraka. Now, the Darakaraka is going to represent the soul of our partner. It's going to represent the types of qualities we seek in relationship. So if your Darakaraka is Mars, you might be attracted to people who are athletic, leaders. They may be a little fiery, they may be a little intense. At worst, they could even be abusive. Okay, now don't freak out if you have Mars Darakaraka. I'm saying that if there's some sort of affliction, if there's something going on in the chart, it can indicate having an abusive relationship. Now, it can also give that athletic, passionate, excited partner. Now, that Mars is in Pisces. So you're also going to be attracted to the Piscean qualities, people who have moon in Pisces, people who have their Atmakaraka in Pisces, which we'll get into. You're going to have that essence to you where when you're around Piscean people, it just feels right. They fulfill something that your soul is aching to develop and cultivate. Okay. I don't know what it is about me. I always attract artists, and I am attracted to artists. It's a theme. It's a theme. My first crush in high school, the first guy that I was ever really, really into was an artist. I've dated artists all throughout. My current partner is an artist. It's like clockwork. It's just something that my soul wants. I just, hung out with one of my dear friends, Amy. She's an artist and stylist. I'm just attracted to those types. It's in my soul. It's in my karmic genetic makeup. And so for you out there, there's been some type of pattern. There's been something that you've been drawn to, and it will be revealed in your chart. So we're going to be looking at the Atmakaraka and the Darakaraka. Again, I've got bunches of examples. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is Rahu and Ketu. Of course, if we're talking about soulmate connections, Rahu and Ketu are absolutely going to be involved. So I'm going to discuss patterns that I've seen with Rahu and Ketu between the D9 chart and the D1 chart that show up in long-lasting, enduring relationships, people who have a lot of this karmic drama to fulfill. Remember, the more karmic drama you have, the longer lasting relationship. This can be seen in partners This can also be seen in friendships and family members. It works, but we're specifically talking about relationships in terms of romantic partners today, but you'll see that it works with your best friend partnerships as well. So, talking about the Atmakaraka and the Darakaraka first, okay. When we're looking at these really long-lasting, enduring relationships, we will often see, okay, you want to find your Atmakaraka and your Darakaraka. Whatever your Darakaraka is, it's going to be significant in the chart of your significant other. Now, it's either going to be exalted. So let's just say the planet holding the lowest degrees in your birth chart is the moon. You look at your partner's chart. They have a lot of planets in the sign of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. Maybe they have moon on the ascendant. Maybe they have an exalted moon. Okay, that planet is going to be significant in some way. Now, some of the main factors that I have seen, and I'll list them here for you, is that between the charts of long-lasting relationships, one person's Atmakaraka is the other person's Darakaraka. This is the low-hanging fruit. So if your Atmakaraka is the moon, you may find that your partner's Darakaraka is the moon. Your sun has the highest degrees in your birth chart. Your partner has the sun lowest degrees in their birth chart, okay? Atmakaraka and Darakaraka are flip-flopped. Now, it could also be that your Atmakaraka and their Darakaraka are in the same sign. Doesn't even have to be a relative planet. Let's say your Atmakaraka is Saturn in Sagittarius. Your partner's Darakaraka is Mercury in Sagittarius. Atmakaraka of your chart is in the same sign as your partner's Darakaraka is in. So another example, we'll look at a lot of these. Another example, your Atmakaraka is Jupiter in Aries. Your partner's Darakaraka is Venus in Aries. So that's number 2. Now, number 3 is some significant interplay with the Atmakaraka or the Darakaraka. So maybe the Atmakarakas are in the same sign. So your Saturn is your Atmakaraka in Sagittarius. Your partner's Atmakaraka is Jupiter in Sagittarius. Maybe even close in degrees. It could be that your Atmakarakas are opposing. Your Atmakaraka is in Gemini. Their Atmakaraka is in Sagittarius. Your Atmakaraka is in Cancer. Their Atmakaraka is in Capricorn. It could be conjoined. It could be opposed. I see those a lot as well. Could be the Darakaraka also. Darakarakas are in the same sign. So that's the planet holding the lowest degrees. They're in the same sign. They're opposing some sort of significant interplay with any of those variables. Now, the final thing I'll say, and I also see this all the time, is Rahu and the sun, Rahu or the sun, being in the same sign as one's Atmakaraka. Because Rahu is that insatiable quality, that obsessiveness, it's glue, it combines charts for a long time. And the sun is your natural Atmakaraka. So if your sun is in the same sign as your partner's Atmakaraka, it's like your Atmakaraka is in the same sign. So Rahu or the sun being in the same sign as another's Atmakaraka is another very significant factor to look at. Another thing that I want to mention is that I do use Rahu as the Atmakaraka. I'll see y'all in the comments. I know that this is something that astrologers argue about. I use Rahu as the Atmakaraka and the Darakaraka. I've been doing this for a while. I've looked at so many charts and I have found it to absolutely 100% work. But because Rahu is retrograde, you have to calculate it a little bit differently. So if Rahu is in very early degrees, if Rahu is at 3 degrees, 4 degrees, it's possible that that is actually your Atmakaraka. If Rahu is at 28 degrees, 27 degrees, it's possible that Rahu is your Darakaraka. Because again, Rahu moves in the opposite direction. So for example, if you have Saturn at 27 degrees, and then you have Rahu at 2 degrees, Rahu would be the Atmakaraka. If you have the moon at 1 degree, and Rahu is at 28 degrees, then the moon would be your Darakaraka, because it has fewer degrees between the next sign. So I just want to throw that out there because I am going to be using Rahu as the Atmakaraka and Darakaraka today. So the next thing that I want to talk about, and we will be referring to these lists that we're creating, is Rahu and Ketu. So I have seen significant consistency with the placement of Rahu and Ketu between the D1 and the D9. So what I have noticed is that couples will either have the same Rahu Ketu placement in the D9. It doesn't have to be perfect. Someone has Rahu in Gemini and Sagittarius, the other person has Rahu and Ketu between Gemini and Sagittarius. They could be flipped, it doesn't matter. Rahu and Ketu in the same signs in the D9. I've also seen partner one, their Rahu Ketu placement in the D9 match the Rahu Ketu placement of the D1 of their partner. So for example, if you have D9 Scorpio and Taurus, your partner may have D1 Scorpio and Taurus. They'll reflect. The other thing that I've seen a lot is the Rahu Ketu placement in the D9 could be the ascendant of your partner. So if you have Leo and Aquarius as your Rahu and Ketu in your Navamsha, in your D9 chart, your partner may be a Leo or Aquarius ascendant. Now, the final thing I'll say is that in these charts, the Rahu and Ketu placement in the D9 could be the ascendant of your partner in the D9. So we can also see that. So if you have Rahu and Ketu in Virgo and Pisces in your D9 chart, you may find that your partner is a Virgo or Pisces in the D9 chart. So these are the main things that I want you to look for in the D9 chart. It works like a charm. It works every time. I'm going to show you all today. It's very, very rare that it doesn't work out. So I did get permission from every single couple that we are going to be looking at today. And we're going to start off with the longest lasting couple, the couple that has been around for forever. I believe it's 40 or 50 plus years. Unfortunately, the husband of these charts has passed away very recently. It was last year, but they were soulmates. And if you ask, they were just absolutely in love until the very end. I mean, this is a really beautiful relationship. So we're going to look at the Atmakaraka, we're going to look at the Darakaraka, we're going to look at Rahu and Ketu, and I'm going to show you how this begins to work. So looking at chart number one, we find the planet holding the highest degrees, and we see that it is the sun at 28 degrees of Pisces. So this individual, you know, the sun is not only the natural Atmakaraka, but it's also their Atmakaraka, and it's in the sign of Pisces. So there is a significance to the sign of Pisces. The partner is going to have some sort of significant Piscean influence. Maybe their Darakaraka is in Pisces, maybe their Atmakaraka is in Pisces, maybe their moon is in Pisces, something significant. The Darakaraka, the planet holding the lowest degrees, is the moon in the sign of Virgo. So if I was talking to this person, I would say, you know, you want to look for someone with lunar qualities. Someone who is nurturing and nourishing and who likes to take care, who is very consistent, who's steadfast, and it's in Virgo. So you may be attracted to very mercurial individuals, people who are methodical and organized and analytical and have some of those mercurial qualities as a Virgo would. Looking at the D9, we see that Rahu and Ketu are in Aries and Libra. Kind of put that on the back burner. So now looking at the second chart, okay, we see that this individual's Atmakaraka is Mars at 27 degrees of Pisces. So we see that their Atmakarakas are within 1 degree of each other. This creates a profound spiritual connection, soulmate connection. Their souls are on the same path. The Atmakaraka is our soul. It's what we're moving towards in life, what we're cultivating ourselves. And they happen to have their Atmakarakas at the very same degree. And his sun is here as well. So having the sun near her Atmakaraka is like what we were just talking about. It's like you're bringing the Atmakarakas together. So it's almost like double time Atmakaraka connection. Mercury is the Darakaraka in the sign of Pisces. So this is that second feature that we discussed where the individual's Atmakaraka is in the same sign as the partner's Darakaraka. Mercury is holding the lowest degrees, you know, it's in the same sign as her Atmakaraka. So even if his sun wasn't in Pisces, even if Mars wasn't in Pisces, his Darakaraka is in the same sign as her Atmakaraka. And it's Mercury. Remember, her Darakaraka is Moon in the sign of Virgo. And it is completely opposing his Mercury. Okay, so now their Darakarakas are also opposite. We discussed that. We could have that combination of Atmakarakas and Darakarakas. So in addition to everything else that we looked at, their Darakarakas are also opposing, and he is fulfilling that mercurial quality that she is seeking. So that is all significant, and I could go on and on and on about their charts, but I'll go ahead and stop there. Now, we don't see anything super significant. He doesn't have Rahu and Ketu in Libra or Aries. He's not an Aries or Libra ascendant, but we look at his Rahu and Ketu in the D9, and we see that Rahu and Ketu are in Aquarius and Leo. Lo and behold, we look at her birth chart, and she is an Aquarius rising. This is the way that Rahu-Ketu connection works. So let's go ahead and look at couple 2. So this couple is so sweet. They met abroad. They met in a foreign place. They had a long distance relationship. They ended up getting together, dating for several years, getting married, stayed married for several years, and then they just had their first baby, which is very sweet. Amazing, beautiful, steadfast, committed partnership. So looking at her chart, chart number 1, we have the moon as her Atmakaraka. We see that moon is holding 28 degrees. It's the highest degree in the birth chart. And then we see that Jupiter is the Darakaraka in the sign of Cancer. It's holding the lowest degree. So both her Atmakaraka and her Darakaraka are in the sign of Cancer. Okay, moon is the Atmakaraka, Jupiter is the Darakaraka. So let's go ahead and look at chart number 2. We see that his Darakaraka is the moon, holding the lowest degrees here. The moon is 7 degrees. So yes, so her Atmakaraka is the moon, his Darakaraka is the moon. We will see this often. So now let's look at this Rahu Ketu. So her Rahu and Ketu in the D9 are in Taurus and Scorpio. And his Rahu and Ketu are Aries and Libra. We notice that her rising sign is Libra. Again, that fulfills his D9. And then we see that in her D9 chart, Rahu and Ketu are between Taurus and Scorpio, and he is a Taurus ascendant in the D1. Works like a charm. Works every time. Test it out. Go look. So looking at this third couple, so those two first ones, low-hanging fruit, super easy to see. We're going to start looking at things a little bit more abstractly because it's not always going to be so obvious and blunt. So this couple has been around. They met in a yoga studio. They dated for several years. They got married. They're on baby number 2. They just had their second child, and they are just such a precious couple. So the first chart, his Atmakaraka is Mars. Okay, his Atmakaraka is Mars at 22 degrees of Virgo. His Darakaraka is Venus at 0 degrees of Leo. So Atmakaraka is Mars, Darakaraka is Venus. So her Atmakaraka is the Sun in Sagittarius, and her Darakaraka is Rahu. So again, some people would say her Darakaraka was Venus, which would mean their Darakarakas are opposing. I accept her Darakaraka as Rahu because I use Rahu as the Atmakaraka and Darakaraka. So her Darakaraka is Rahu. Atmakaraka is the Sun. So when we look at these two charts, we see that he brings Rahu to her Atmakaraka. Remember, we talked about the Sun or Rahu can be in the same sign as another's Atmakaraka, and that creates that soulmate connection. And so we see that here. Her Atmakaraka is at 24 degrees of Sagittarius, and his Rahu is at 21 degrees of Sagittarius. Her Jupiter is at 20 degrees of Virgo. So her Jupiter is 2 degrees away from his Atmakaraka. So you'll see those significant kind of connections too. Jupiter is her first house ruler, which is significant. So let's go ahead and look at these D9 charts here. So first of all, they're flipped, right? He's a Scorpio rising in his D9. She is a Taurus rising in her D9. So they flip. Now, his Rahu and Ketu are in Libra and Aries. We don't see a significant connection in her D1. Her Rahu and Ketu are in Pisces and Virgo. We don't see a significant connection between the D1. But then we see that in her D1, she has Rahu and Scorpio and Ketu in Taurus. He is a Scorpio ascendant in his D9. So we see that level of connection. So we can also see the reverse, right? We talked about how someone's Rahu and Ketu placement in the D9 can determine the ascendant of the partner in the D1, but we just saw the reverse of that. Her Rahu and Ketu in the D1 determined the ascendant in the D9. So you can also see the reverse. It's just a little bit less common. So let's go ahead and look at our fourth couple here. So his Atmakaraka is Rahu in Scorpio. Some people may say that it's Venus in the sign of Pisces, but I do use the Rahu Ketu. So his Rahu is the Atmakaraka in Scorpio, and his Darakaraka is the moon at 4 degrees of Cancer. Now, when we look at her chart, she has the Atmakaraka as the moon in Aries. So his Darakaraka is the moon, right? Darakaraka is the moon at 4 degrees of Cancer. Her Atmakaraka is the moon at 29 degrees of Aries. So we see that connection. Her Atmakaraka is his Darakaraka. And her sun is in the same sign as his Atmakaraka. So his Atmakaraka is Rahu at 1 degree of Scorpio. Her sun is in the same sign as his Atmakaraka. So that would also be significant. So when we look at the Rahu-Ketu connection between these two charts, we don't necessarily see anything significant right off the bat, right? She has Aries and Libra as her Rahu and Ketu in her D9. He doesn't have Rahu and Ketu in those signs, nor is he one of those ascendants. When you look at his Ketu and Rahu in the D9, Capricorn and Cancer, she's not a Capricorn or Cancer rising in the D1. She doesn't have that Rahu Ketu placement in the D1. But his Rahu and Ketu are in Cancer and Capricorn. She is a Cancer rising in her D9. So it fulfills that karmic connection that we've been noticing. So let's go ahead and look at our final couple. So I like this chart as an example because it shows a little bit more of a nuanced approach to the Atmakaraka and the Darakaraka. This is what you're going to see the vast majority of the time, so please do not freak out if you don't have any of those other connections. Okay, Sun and Rahu in the same sign as the Atmakaraka, Darakaraka is opposing, you know, whatever. As we mentioned before, we want the Darakaraka to be significant in our partner's charts because that's what we are looking for. So if your Darakaraka is in Leo and your partner has moon in Leo, that's already a great start. If your Darakaraka is the sun and your partner has an exalted sun, that is a great, that's really a good sign, right? It can't determine complete compatibility, but that's a good sign. So let's go ahead and look at this. I really like this example. So she is Mars Atmakaraka. Her Mars is holding 29 degrees in the sign of Leo. Her Darakaraka is Jupiter at 3 degrees of Aries. So she's really looking for that Jupiterian energy, and she's really fulfilling the Martian quality. Now her partner has Mars as the Atmakaraka as well. So they have the same Atmakaraka. You can see that his Atmakaraka is in Virgo. And his Darakaraka is Saturn, also in Virgo. So he has a lot of this Virgonian energy. Now, it's very, very interesting when we look at these two charts because, and we actually don't have the birth time for him. We don't know for sure what his ascendant is. So the Rahu-Ketu combination doesn't work out as well, but looking, you know, just at the Atmakaraka and the Darakaraka here, his Darakaraka is Saturn. Her Saturn and moon are conjoined. Okay? Totally works. If your Darakaraka is Venus, you'll be attracted to people who have Moon and Venus conjoined in their birth chart. If your Darakaraka is Mercury, you'll be attracted to people who are Gemini or Virgo. They have Moon and Mercury together. You just want to have something significant about that planet playing out. And so for him, his Darakaraka is Saturn. He's drawn to her naturally because the most important planet in Vedic astrology, which is all about the moon and the mind, is conjoined with Saturn. Now, we also see that her Ketu, Sun, and Venus are in the same sign as his Atmakaraka and Darakaraka. Remember I said if Rahu and the Sun are in the same sign as your Atmakaraka, that's a good sign because it kind of brings the souls together. So Sun is her natural Atmakaraka, and it's with his Atmakaraka, which is Mars. Ketu also has a significant karmic effect. Now, what I really want to show y'all, her Darakaraka is Jupiter. Okay. When we look at her Atmakaraka, which is Mars, his Jupiter is in the same sign as her Atmakaraka. So it kind of fulfills that connection. If we were overlapping the chart, we see that her Darakaraka is in the same sign as her Atmakaraka because he's taking Jupiter, which is her Darakaraka, and putting it in the same sign as her Atmakaraka. And so this is a little bit harder to describe, but you'll see connections like this as well. So for example, if your Atmakaraka is Jupiter and it's in the sign of Aries, and your Darakaraka is Venus, you might be attracted to people who have Venus in Aries, because when you overlap the charts, it brings that compatibility together. So another example is if you have Mars in the sign of Capricorn. Okay, Mars is your Atmakaraka, it's in the sign of Capricorn. Venus is your Darakaraka in the sign of Aquarius. You might be attracted to people who have Venus in Capricorn because when you overlap the charts, it brings your Atmakaraka and Darakaraka together. So it's a little bit more nuanced, but I've seen this combination as well. So in conclusion, the Darakaraka is what we're looking for on a soul level. If your Darakaraka is in Virgo, there's going to be an element to the planet. So if it's Mars, there's a Mars quality. But if it's Virgo, it's a Mercury quality. You're going to be looking for people who have mercurial tendencies. If your Darakaraka is in Aries, you're going to be looking for people with Aries tendencies. This is the way that it works out. And similarly, your Atmakaraka is going to be what your partner really feels and picks up on. And so your Atmakaraka should be strong or significant in their chart. If you have a Saturn Atmakaraka, Saturn needs to have some big influence on your partner's chart because that helps them understand you. So that is what I have today. I hope that you found it helpful. I'll make more videos in the future if you are curious. Again, my name is Christine Rodriguez. This is the Astrology Now page, YouTube page. I hope that you enjoyed it.